The Fueled by Death guest.
We know you a lot from playing guitar in, Acey Slade and the Dark Party and Dope and Murderdolls and the Misfits, but we've also seen you play bass for Joan Jett. So my first question is wondering, which instrument did you start on?
Actually, I started singing when I was in the church choir as a kid. And, I guess just not enough people like my voice enough to pay to hear it. So I had to improvise to other things.
That's awesome. So so you started to sing, and when did you kind of gravitate towards an instrument then after that?
Well, I was in the church choir, and it was kind of boring, but then we ended up doing a thing called the Passion Play, which is basically the reenactment of the crucifixion of Christ. And my favorite part of the whole thing was when they crucified Christ, not because I have any sort of aversion to Christianity, but they had these fake spears that spewed blood everywhere, and the crown of thorns spewed blood, and when they would whip him, he had fake skin. They really did a good job on it. And I was like, this is fucking awesome. I'm like, check this out, and I think I had just seen Dario Argento's Suspiria on late night TV around that time too. So I was like, this is fucking cool, man. This is way better than the whole Easter egg part of it. I dig this, because it's the whole Easter, resurrection thing, whatever. So, and then shortly after that, I went to see Alice Cooper play, and he was doing the whole decapitation thing in an electric chair, and I connected the two. I was like, wow, man, this is just like at church, So me and my friends, we wanted to start a band after seeing Alice Cooper, and I started on guitar, and myself and my friend were both playing guitar. It was a small town in Pennsylvania, and we couldn't find a singer, so we were splitting the vocal duties. I was kind of a better singer than him, so he kicked me out, and I was like, well, I'm just going to try singing, and really, as soon as I could put together 3 chords, I was off and running. I wanted to create. I was more into the creative side of it. And I'm like that with everything. It's even with photography, I don't really take the time to learn a whole lot. As soon as I figured out the exposure triangle, I was like, okay, now I'm off and running and taking photos. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. If you put me on a wood block and a cool band needs a wood block player, I'm going to play a wood block. So.
I'll remember that. I think you have to be one of the first people I've ever heard who went to an Alice Cooper concert and was like, "This reminds me of church."
Yeah,
I think that's pretty great.
But to be fair, it sounds like your church was very brutal.
Yeah.
There's a reason I didn't like going.
So fast forwarding a little bit, you're playing in a band now. Was kind of your track always okay, I want to do this as a living, or was there a moment where that kind of hit you, I want to pursue this as a career?
Yeah, I mean, I to be honest with you, I always thought that I could accomplish it, and I never had intentions to do anything else but this. But I also, when I was growing up, the music business was a lot different, and I always thought okay, maybe I can get to be in a band as big as the Dead Kennedys or something like that, who really in the grand scheme of the music business aren't very big bands,
Right.
And so for me, it's my expectations were low, but I knew I could do it, and boy, how lucky am I? I mean, I've played in 2 of the most influential bands in punk rock,
Totally.
So I never in a million years would have guessed that, so.
And you have not only gotten to play with some of those acts, I mean, the different bands that you've played with and have toured with, I mean, it really runs the gamut of music in a sense. Like, I mean, because, you know, your time with bands like Dope and the Murderdolls, like, I mean, that's got to be a lot different than your time, say, you know, playing bass with Joan Jett, or now with you touring with the Misfits. Like, is there a lot of difference in different tours that you've been on, or do you kind of feel like it's always like the same kind of deal?
Yeah, yes and no. You know, with Joan, on one hand, we were a lot more pampered. You know, it's like, it was funny. I had basses that, like, I wouldn't see except for when it was handed to me while I was walking on stage. And like after 6 months, I'd look at it and be like, hey, how'd this scratch get here? I don't even know how that got there because I haven't had to change the strings myself in 6 months or whatever, you know? So, you know, and then you take that and then you take a band like Dope. You know, it's not playing the same size places Joan is, so the guarantees aren't quite as high. So you're doing a little bit more of the work on your own. But you know, the difference is that I find that the personalities of the people are different. The Blackheart camp, it was a bit more, let's just say, I don't know if professional would quite be the right word, but it was very dry, you know. And I find that like some of the bands where the success level's a little lower is almost a little more fun, which isn't to say unprofessional, because it could sound that way. That's not the case at all. But you know, I guess maybe sometimes when the stakes are higher, it makes people a little edgier. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. I mean, you look at, you know, a band like Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. I mean, like you're kind of getting at, you know, it's a more polished kind of atmosphere. And I mean, when you're talking about fun, I mean, you have to be talking about being in the Murderdolls, right? I mean, like that must have been incredibly fun. You guys look like you always were having fun.
I've ever had in my life.
Oh my gosh! And I mean, can we talk a little bit about that? Like that's, to me, is an interesting era in music, because I mean, now, like I said, you are touring as a, you know, rhythm guitar with an iconic horror punk band, the Misfits, you know, who basically started the whole deal. But like with the Murderdolls and even with Dope, and like, but I mean, you know, it was that whole wave that like Marilyn Manson was like really bringing around at that time. And it's like, what was that like being a part of that, you know, because that kind of changed music in general at that moment?
Well, it was really cool for me because at that time I had played with Dope and we had done our first record, which didn't perform quite as well as Sony had hoped. And then we did the second record. It was 9/11. The whole downloading thing had just started.
Right.
Like literally, you know, those two things together happened almost at the same time.
Yeah.
And so we found ourselves without a record deal and not knowing what the future was. And that was kind of where I thought I was going to land. Like that was the bar that I had kind of thought I was going to fall on, meaning like I was like, okay, I know I can do this. I know I can get into a band with a record deal and tour and all that stuff. So when Dope was kind of done, I was like, well, you know, I set out to do something and I did it, and maybe this is it. So when I got the call to play with the Murderdolls, and it was like, you know, hey, initially Joey's plan was like, okay, we've got a string of dates in the UK, in Europe. We've got a string of dates in UK and in Europe, and then we have a string of dates in Japan opening for Guns N' Roses, and that's it. Are you in? And I was like,
yeah.
And he didn't, and there was no expectations to do anything beyond that. That was going to be it. And I think there was a couple of US shows too. And so I saw it as like a second chance. So I was so grateful. I was like, oh my God, this is great. And who knows, like even, again, it was like, and even if this just lasts a few weeks, hey, I could kind of go out on top. I mean, opening for Guns N' Roses in Japan. And at that point I had never been to Japan or Europe. So we had it was like, and also the record company in the United States, Roadrunner, told Joey, they're like, look, we think this record is terrible. We think this band is terrible. Jeez. We're not going to support this. I mean, it flat out, they told us, we're not supporting this record. You're wasting your time. We're not going to get behind it.
Goodness.
And so kind of the attitude was a little bit of like I don't want to say live for today, but it was like, well, fuck it. Like, let's just grab the bull by the horns and enjoy these few weeks. So everybody was out of their freaking minds.
Oh my God.
You know, Ben and Eric had never really toured before. I knew sort of what to expect because Dope had toured with Slipknot.
Right.
Excuse me. And at that time, you got to remember, Slipknot hadn't unmasked themselves yet.
Right. Yeah. They were all still their persona, like even in interviews and everything else. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it was pre-cell phone camera days too.
Yeah.
So I mean, we would literally step off the bus and paparazzi would be there, and they would be like taking pictures of me or any of the other guys in the band because those guys really don't know shit anyway.
Right.
But let alone it's like they see a long-haired guy and they're like, he must be the Slipknot guy, and there's pictures of me wearing a T-shirt that says, "No, I don't fucking play in Slipknot."
That's excellent.
And it was solely for those paparazzi guys, you know, because nobody knew.
Right.
So it was like, it was pretty crazy because people were really crazy about Joey and they were crazy about Slipknot. And it was funny because, you know, we did the U.S. tour, and when we toured the States, you would see the disappointment on people's faces. We would play and they'd be like, this doesn't sound anything like Slipknot. But when we went to Europe and when we went to Japan, people were like, oh my God, this doesn't sound anything like Slipknot. This is great, you know? So it was weird that the States did not like us.
Yeah.
And our record company did not like us for the same reason that everyone else loved us. So
that's interesting. Like, I mean, and like I was getting at it. It was just such an interesting time of music because, you know, bands like Murderdolls and Slipknot and everything. It was changing that whole genre, and it surprises me hearing about it, looking back on it with Roadrunner, you know, dealing with it like they did, because it's like dummies, you know. I mean, come on, like it was like you guys were doing exactly what you know everybody should have been liking. It's weird when suits get involved, I guess, you know.
Well, you got to remember too that musically we were tuned standard. It wasn't down tuning. Korn was still excuse me, like the new metal thing was still really at a fevered pitch, and we weren't down tuned. We had guitar solos, and it was very much, you know, the Misfits meets Motley Crue.
Right. And
I almost kind of credit the band more for starting bands like Black Veil Brides, New Year's Day.
Yep.
A lot of the creepy kids that are around now. I kind of credit the Murderdolls for starting that more than anything.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think, like I said, you know, it's something that it's like that moment in time in musical history, you know, and it'll always be there. Yeah. And it's neat that you got to be a part of it, you know.
So, speaking about a weird moment in music history, that you were also part of was the Rock Band video games.
Yeah.
And we're to understand that you were part of the motion capture for one of the guitarist characters in Rock Band 2. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was the guitar player for, if you picked the male rock guitar player, that's all me. And if you pick the male punk singer, that's all me.
All right, so walk us back. How do you get? Did you just wake up and get a phone call one day and we're like, we need you in the Green Man suit, or like how do you get that gig? How do you get that gig?
My friend Joe Letts, who plays in the band Combi Christ. Excuse me, the allergies are bad. He's like a mover and a shaker. He's always working an angle.
Okay.
And he tipped me off to it, and I went down and I auditioned for it, and I got it.
What's an audition like that? What's that process like? Do they just like look at you and go, "Yeah, you look like a rock star. You're in, kid"?
No. you have to air guitar to like Van Halen's Panama with like a cardboard cutout guitar.
Oh my God.
It's really funny.
I really hope there's footage of this somewhere.
I really hope there isn't.
I bet you don't. Oh my God. Okay. So you go down an audition and then you got it. You got the gig.
Yeah.
So what was it like? Was it really like, because I'm trying to picture motion capture at that time. Was it all the little balls on? Like, did you have to wear like a suit with all the little balls on? Really? That's so weird.
Yeah.
Like, that's so crazy.
Yep. Yep, I had balls all over me. balls were rubbing all over my body.
Oh my
while I was
gosh!
in spandex.
what a cool thing. Like we both, Dima and myself, found this the piece of information randomly on the internet, and I was just like, I gotta ask about that because it's just one of those random points in your life where you're like, you must have been thinking how did I get here? How am I doing this? Pretty neat.
And it's funny because that version of the band of the game sold over 8 million copies.
Oh my god!
And it's so funny because they animate over top of you, so it doesn't look anything like you.
Right.
And I was at some sort of family thing around that time, and these kids were it was like a family picnic thing, and there's kids there I didn't even know, and they're playing the video game. And I look in, I'm like, oh no shit, and I look in, I'm like, yo, what's up guys? I'm like, yo, that's me there, right? And they look at me and they look at the TV and they shrug their shoulders and keep playing. They weren't impressed at all. They didn't care.
Ungrateful little shits.
That's I'm impressed. I think that's pretty rad. I think
just curious, how many hours of work did that take to get all
well
that?
The funny thing was it was one day to do the guitar stuff, one day to do the vocal stuff, and they paid me $1,000 a day, and I was like, fuck yeah,
right?
This is awesome, easiest money I ever made, right?
Yeah.
And I had lunch every day with the guy who owned it, and so we would talk, making small talk. He's like, yeah, I want to buy a guitar, and I'm thinking oh, he sounds like an upstart type guy, and so when the first week sales on that thing were so high that they gave that guy a $24 million bonus.
Whoa.
And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, how come I only got $1,000?
Yeah, right?
Perspective's a funny thing.
Oh, man, that's ridiculous.
Yep.
That's funny, though. So we kind of touched upon this earlier with what you're doing now, which is you are touring with this current incarnation of the Misfits, and kind of going back on the audition process. Was that the same kind of thing? Did you have to audition for that, or did you kind of know people to know people, or how did you get that?
Yeah.
gig?
Well, Glenn had asked me to do the Sam Hain reunion that he had done, and I couldn't do it because of my obligations with Joan. Jerry I had known since the Murderdolls days, and we'd stayed in touch over time. And when the Joan thing ran its course, I went to lunch with Jerry, and he had gotten a new guitar player because Des from Black Flag wasn't in the band anymore.
Right.
And he had gotten another guy, and I'm like, that's the wrong guy. I'm the right guy. I'm the guy.
Nice.
And I'm like, I'm going home, and I'm like, I'm learning your set, and I'm going to audition, and I'm going to be in your band because you got the wrong guy. And Jerry, being the stand-up guy that he is, he's like, you have a great attitude, but I did just hire this guy. I can't really do that.
Right.
And so when they were doing the incarnation, when they were figuring out their plan, the whole thing was that anybody who knew who was brought in had to have no previous history with either Danzig or the Misfits.
Oh.
And I qualified for both. So I guess when my name came up, it was, Glenn was like, yeah, I know him. And Jerry was like, yeah, I know him too. So, and I also had friends in my corner too, my friend Kevin Wilson, he's a photographer. He was putting bugs in people's ears, and Randy Blythe from Lamb of God, he had put a bug in their ear too. So that I had a good little cheering section there too. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So how's it been touring with them now? I mean, they're, it's crazy that, titans of punk rock are back in full force. What is it like to be a part of that, I guess is my question.
Well, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, we're still waiting to see what's going to happen for the future shows at this point.
Right.
But, the shows that we did were very, literally I was on stage, and I'm watching Doyle, who's just amazing.
Yeah.
And Dave Lombardo from Slayer.
Yeah.
And Glenn and Jerry, and I'm watching. All of a sudden, I look down, and I got a guitar around my neck, and I'm playing too. And it's like,
It's got to be surreal.
Hold on a second. This is amazing, you know.
That's so cool.
And the crowd, man.
Oh.
The crowd was bananas.
I mean, and it as well it should be, because again, you know, you want to talk about musical history, you know, especially with punk rock. Misfits are where it's at.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff and I actually went out to Riot Fest when the Misfits were playing, and I feel like everybody was there specifically to see the reincarnation of Misfits. It was really an incredible turnout. It was nuts.
Yeah, it was nuts. I don't think I've ever been in a crowd with that many people before. It was.
And the funny thing was that there's people that are diehard fans of the band that didn't go.
Yeah.
Because they're like, it's really not going to happen. You guys are all suckers for going,
right?
Because it's not happening,
right?
And then they're like, "Oh my God, it really happened!"
It really happened.
You know?
Yeah. It's
because
pretty
they kept
crazy.
everything so tight-lipped that everything was kept so mum. You know?
Yeah, totally. A question I wanted to ask, because you've had such an incredible career. And you know, you have had a career of being, you know, like the hired gun, the guy who, you know, like you did with Jerry, you know, you're like, I'm the guy you need kind of thing. But you've also had a career as, you know, your own frontman, you know, Acey Slade and the Dark Party. Do you prefer one or the other? Do you prefer an instrument over the other, or you just love it all?
I love it all. I mean, if I could wave a magic wand, I would love for my own music to have the success that the people that I've worked for has had.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, either way, it's not a bad situation.
So with everything you've done, all the bands you've been in, and you know, all the tours you've been on, everything that you've accomplished, what fuels you to keep getting out there, getting on stage, and kicking ass? Like, what keeps you going?
I just love it.
Yeah.
You know, it's yeah. I mean, it's just the adventure of it. You know, it's very much a pirate kind of existence. You know,
work on that a little bit. Like, what do you mean by like a pirate existence? I love the sound of that.
We go into towns and places we've never been before, or places you have been before, and you fuck shit up and you leave. You know?
Not to mention that you guys look kind of like pirates.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true. That's
and
awesome.
Maybe from time to time go bar.
I love that analogy. That's great. Do you have any places that you like playing over others, like either venues or cities or countries or anything?
I mean, I like going to places that I haven't been before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Those have got to be getting
cool.
few and far between at this point in your career, though.
Yeah. I mean, the only places I haven't played that I feel like I really want to play is like maybe someplace like India.
Oh.
Haven't played China yet. But besides that, I mean, shit, we played a place called Krasnodar, Russia.
Wow.
You know, it's like, where the hell is that?
Right.
You know?
Where the hell is that?
Yeah.
In Russia?
Yeah, somewhere.
Oh man,
It was that awesome though, playing out there.
You know, but that's the fun of it. Is you know, you never kind of know what's going to happen. So playing there, that was. I wish I would have had more time there because, and I don't mean to speak poorly if anyone from Krasnodar is listening to this podcast, but it is a weird place. It was like a time capsule.
Oh, weird.
And I'm also into photography, and I would have loved to have taken a day and just photographed that city because it was a weird place. Like when we got off the plane and we were waiting for our ride, it was almost like that scene in Superman where what do you call it? The three guys from Krypton or whatever are like walking into the town and they're all dressed in black and everyone's like, oh my God. That's what we were like in Krasnodar, you know?
Oh, weird.
And but that was weird. Like I said, it's always weird. So we get there, we check into the hotel, we go to the gig. We were all sick, and they gave us these antibiotics. I don't know what they were.
Oh no!
But these were, they must have had like radiation in them or something because like you literally could feel yourself getting better. Like it was almost like I felt like a superhero in a movie where, you know, they get shot and they can see their wounds healing before their eyes.
Wow. Oh my God. Maybe there was kryptonite in there.
Yeah, I was about to say.
It might have been.
Steroids and kryptonite.
Oh my goodness. That's crazy. What a crazy experience.
And then we get to, and then the venue smelled like kerosene.
Oh,
like it was just
Goodness.
like it was weird. Like we were kind of getting nauseous and headaches. So you're getting better from the flu, but then you're getting these headaches, and then but the venue was like sick. So it's like that's what I mean. It's like it's this weird roll of the dice. It's like you're backstage. It smells like kerosene. You're getting nauseous and headachy. You've got the flu. You go out. The venue is state of the art. It's banging. Like, why can't you figure out this kerosene problem, guys? You know?
Weird.
Have you ever had any like scary moments on the road that are like, oh my God, do we die today?
When I was in Croatia, I was in Zagreb, Croatia, and I went for a walk. I went for a wander, and this was years ago, so this is before navigation on cell phones.
Okay.
And I went for a walk, and I am usually pretty confident in my sense of direction, and I went for a walk, and I got turned around. I got a little lost, and it seemed like I was getting into a sketchy area. So I went into a doorway, and I pulled my map out. Like I didn't want to stand in the middle of everybody with a map.
Right.
And I was looking, and I'm like, you know, okay, like where am I? And I'm like, okay, I think I figured it out. Well, two guys saw me do it, I guess. And as I walked out, they came up on either side of me, and they're like, my friend, where are you going? And I'm like, yeah, I know where I'm going. And the one guy grabbed my arm. He's like, no, you're coming with us. And I'm like, nah, I don't think so. And I started to panic a little. I was like, okay, I'm just going to like sit like a girl and start pounding my fist and screaming if that's what I got to do.
Right.
And I kind of fooled myself. Yeah. What is it they call that with kids? Like, there's a technique they call that for kids, like, this is not my mommy, or
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wow.
So I was about to do that, and I pulled away, and then there's another time in Copenhagen, Denmark, where I got off the bus and I looked, and it looked like everything was laid out like a grid, and I saw something that looked kind of interesting. My thing, of course, first thing in the morning, seek out coffee, you know?
Yep.
So I got off the bus. I looked. I'm like, all right, let me. I think I got this. So I walked down the street, and I'm just kind of exploring Copenhagen and checking it out. Get to the end of the street, and I'm like, okay, like, so if I make a left and then another left and then another left, I'll circle back around to the bus, you know? So I make the left, make the next left. Well, that street all of a sudden gets all dog-legged and crazy and stuff like that. And all of a sudden I'm looking at my watch, and it's getting close to time for sound check. And I'm like, shit, man, I'm lost. I'm like, well, let me get a cup of coffee and sort it out. I go to get a cup of coffee and a pastry. My credit card doesn't work because it's in Copenhagen. I'm like, shit. And this is pre-cell phone days.
Right.
So now I'm like totally lost. And as I tried to get unlost, I got even more lost. So I'm like walking around, and I can't remember the name of the venue. And so I'm like, oh, man. So now I'm kind of starting to freak out, and I'm really starting to panic. It's 5 minutes after sound check time, and I'm standing there, and I'm like trying to get somebody to help me. Nobody speaks English, and I see a poster for the gig. And so I'm standing there. I'm like, all right, perfect. So I'm standing there next to the poster. Excuse me, do you know where this is? Do you know where this is? Finally, someone's like, are you looking for this venue? What do you want to know? I said, where is this venue? And they're like, and I'm like having a heart attack, cold sweats, you know? And I'm like, where is this venue? And they're like, the venue on the poster. I said, yeah. And they're like, you're standing right behind it. You're here. You fucking idiot.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, at least you weren't super late then.
No, like, and then of course I walk in like, yeah, I'm all right. I'm cool.
Oh, that's funny.
No sweat.
Oh my gosh.
No panic.
So, you mentioned that, outside of being a world touring musician, you enjoy photography. What got you into taking pictures?
Well, when I was touring with Joan, we would play a lot of what they call flyover states or tertiary markets,
right,
so to speak. And we played a place called Wendover, Nevada, which you fly into Salt Lake City and drive about an hour and a half across nothing but salt flats to where there's a cluster of like 5 casinos.
Right.
And we played there once, and I know you guys know this, like I'm sober, and I'm sitting there in this casino hotel, and I'm like, it's the most depressing place ever.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh my God, like the only thing to do here is get wasted and forget that you're here, you know?
Right.
And so we played there once, and then and then I saw it on the itinerary about 9 months again later. And I started to figure out, like, okay, like with Joan, they have their markets where they always hit.
Right.
So I'm going to keep going back to Wendover, Nevada type places.
Right.
So my wife had a DSLR camera, and it was like a good like starter camera with a good starter lens. And so I took that with me there the next time, and I'm like, well, let me see what's there. Like I've always wanted to check out the desert. You know, I grew up in Pennsylvania and then moved to New York City. I've never walked through the desert before.
Right.
So let me check this out. And I ended up finding out that Wendover, Nevada is where they did a lot of the testing for the atom bomb. Oh. There's like all these abandoned like salt flat racer cars.
Oh, cool.
There's just all this abandoned urban decay, and it was awesome. It was so fucking cool. And then I was like, man, I can't wait to go back to Wendover next time because I want to retake this shot. And it was just like I thought it was just like the coolest place. So I went from a place that I was like, this is where hope goes to die.
Yeah.
To like, this is the coolest place ever.
That's
and
really cool.
Photography did that. So
that's awesome. And it's cool that, you know, you continue to do that. And I'm sure you've been able to pick up a lot of pointers from, you know, friends in the industry. You mentioned Kevin Wilson, who we all actually met down in the city just recently too, and what an incredible photographer he is. So I'm sure you've been able to kind of, you know, pick the brains of some of your friends, and that makes it even more fun.
Yeah, it's between Kevin and Randy and our one friend Doug, who's a New York firefighter. It's like it seems like we keep leapfrogging each other in our different areas where we're making progress in that. So it's kind of like you always have somebody to bounce ideas off of, or your friend will look at your shots and go, oh, you know what, you should have done this. Or, you know, they might call me up and say, hey, what do you think about, you know, that or the other thing? So yeah, it's become a cool thing.
That's really, really awesome. So where can people follow Acey Slade? Like, where can our listeners find you on the internet?
Yeah, well, Acey Slade Music is my website. Right now, it's just a merch store, but we're going to be relaunching that soon.
Cool.
So hopefully that'll be by the time this podcast goes. But AceySladeMusic.com, or you know, my Instagram is Acey Slade. Facebook, any of the usual offenders. You know,
easy. And musically, what's coming up next for you?
You know, that's like the $1 million question right now. I'm trying to sort out what the fall's going to look like. It will be busy.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of figuring out which things make the most amount of sense. I'm producing a band right up until early September, and then fall and winter are looking like they're going to be busy, but I kind of have the attitude of like, well, until I have an airline ticket booked in my hand, nothing's 100%, you know? So, so we'll see. Well, I hate to be vague, but I don't know.
It seems like you do a really good job of like keeping your expectations managed, which, I mean, you were talking earlier that like, you know, it sounded like it was your career's rock bottom, but it was your top expectations of when you started on your journey. And I think that's kind of a healthy outlook, I guess, because the only surprises are pleasant ones for you. Yeah,
well, that's true. I mean, you kind of, and I'm also really grateful too. It's
yeah, that helps.
I'm always, you know, very, very grateful for anything from, you know, a person hiring me to work for them to the people who come to the show. You know, I never take for granted that there's a guy that's walking into Guitar Center today that, you know, was out framing a house all day or, you know, doing whatever it is that they do, or working at Guitar Center. and they're looking at the wall of guitars and they can't afford the one that they want, and they got to buy the cheaper one. And that guy would really, I'm not that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel very, very grateful for that, like that guy. And then that guy comes to the shows and says, man, I wish I was doing that. Well, that guy can do it too, so.
Well, we're incredibly grateful.
Or girl.
Yes, totally.
We're incredibly grateful to have you on, man, and it's really cool to get to talk to people with your solid mind frame and all your experience and all your awesome rock stardom and all your crazy stories about almost getting murdered in foreign countries.
And like I said, like we'll obviously make sure that all of our listeners can follow you, and when you do make all of whatever decisions you're going to make, which is a good problem to have. You've got a bunch of things that are possibilities, and when they actually become realities, we'll be right there with you.
Awesome.
So thanks again, man, for being on the show.
This has been Fueled by Deathcast, a Death Wish Coffee Company podcast production. Thanks for listening.